Well, this is new.
I just.
Hey, Victoria, can you hear
I
us?
think I would.
I can hear you, but what it's doing is showing you my profile photo instead of me, which is fine, but oh, I see. Start video. But how did it get my profile
There you
photo?
go.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, I'm sorry I can't attend. I'm in Greece looking at the Acropolis.
Sure.
That's a good excuse.
Yeah. Victoria, I'm gonna just mute the thing until we get started, but.
Yeah,
if
I'm gonna
you-
mute me too because I'm eating a snack because I'm starving.
Okay. All right, thanks.
I mean, it's not. reflecting and we aren't sort of.
Hey, just so you guys online know, we're waiting on Tara. She'll be here in a few minutes, so we're just waiting for Tara, since she's our chair, and we'll have quorum with her.
slackers are here. Okay, so we'll start off with roll call. Could you do that, or?
I'll just rattle it off, battles here.
Marcy Dice here. Sarah Mostel here.
Victoria?
Here,
Oh, there she is. She had her mic on. Seth Benedetto
He won't be attending, and James.
and James Caniglia.
James might pop on later if he
Okay.
can.
Okay. So we have quorum.
Mhm.
Okay, we have, approval of the minutes.
I wasn't at the last meeting, I can't approve them.
Well, I'll motion to approve the minutes that I sent.
I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Let's do that.
Okay, great. Any old business?
I did want to bring up, so that meeting that I wasn't here and was recorded,
Yeah.
there is not audio with it, because you have to record a specific way to get the audio.
Okay,
So we just need to get, because you guys approved a couple of things, so we just need to get those motions
Okay.
and the actions that were taken
okay,
and get those recorded and
okay.
see it.
Advice on how we should do that?
I think, if just an email, we can kind of
Okay.
put some notes together since I wasn't there, but if,
I can send you the template
Yeah.
that I used for the minutes.
Okay,
yeah.
I can put the motions together. I didn't make the one to approve the minutes, but that's pretty straightforward, but I did make the one to approve the bylaws. I don't remember who seconded it. That I do not remember.
okay. I jotted some notes down for that. I think I might have thrown them away today when I was cleaning out my folder, but I can dig them out of the garbage.
Okay.
I will do that.
Yeah,
Email
great.
you that. Okay. Right, so we have some new business.
Yeah.
Great, exciting. We want to approach that.
So the first one, we have Chris is here and Kate.
Yes.
Nice to meet you. So Chris, approached me a couple weeks ago regarding the coffee kiosk that hasn't been in use for several years, and what sort of permits might be needed to bring that into compliance. And so I think since it was in use, there have been some zoning regulations that have changed and some requirements that have changed, which would increase the cost of drastically, to open that up. So part of that is, it's also a conditional use because it's a drive-through facility, so it's something that will have to go to planning board, but since it's within the urban renewal district and there's some infrastructure improvements that'll be needed, I thought this would be a great time for Chris to kind of, she put together a little packet of, you know, what's being proposed, location and all of that, and I can let Chris, if you, or either of you, if you want to talk more on what you're hoping to do there.
Well, yeah, this, I showed some pictures too, but this site, of course, at 1125 Broadway North, or Avenue North, and it's owned by, Fred Brewer. He lives in Park City, and he's, so I'm kind of acting as his agent as far as the land and what we want to do with it. Because of the newer laws, if you look back at these two aerial ones, aerial Google things I took, the lot that he owns he has a storage back here, he has, you know, the school buses parked back there, he has this Summit cleaning business, and then they had the coffee hut, and his daughter ran it for quite a few years. I don't know how many years it's been empty, but it does it is on the city sewer system already for the gray water. And has a well for the Summit cleaning business. That was his original, Fred's business back in the 80s, I think, was refrigeration business. So anyway, he has a well there, and it services this hut. So from my perspective, that's wonderful, because I had a coffee hut years ago in Three Forks, Montana, and we had to haul in all the water, you know, and then do the grade, you know, I mean, it was a lot, because you had to bring water in and empty it out and all that. So this is great as far as I'm concerned. The outside needs to be paved, I'm told now, so, I showed what the old traffic pattern was. There is a gravel road, kind of circles or, you know, arcs around the front of that building. They serve their coffee out of the front window, but there's windows on both sides of the building too. So we're proposing, you know, we want to be able to let people enter in and come down, and if the one side's busy with cars, they can just loop around and catch the other side window. And then also want to propose a nice picnic area, do some greenery, and, you know, spruce it up there in front of the building, to the edge of the property. So that's kind of our desire. The inside, I took a picture of that for you guys too. It's not that bad, really. I mean, it's got the flooring needs to be replaced. I think you can see that. And on the right, you can see that it had just a normal, kind of like a kitchen sink in there. And they knew, before I even asked Jesse, you know, doesn't that have to be a 3-bay, you know, so 3-bay sink plus the little hand washing sink's got to be installed there. And then there is a hot water tank underneath there, but it's really super old too, so we know it's just going to have to be replaced. But other than that, it's going to just be major elbow cleaning on the interior, cleaning it all up, and it's got nice space, really. I was kind of surprised when we opened up the back door to see how big it is, really, compared to what we used to have. So that's our proposal. Like I said, I was very excited that when I heard that there was already a building, and I would just love to be able to open this up and utilize that. I am a Red Lodge native. My daughter wasn't born here, but that's okay. But I grew up here, and I just moved back this summer after a long time away out of state. So I'm so thrilled to be back home, and this is something I think would be so much fun for us. We've got granddaughters that are just dying to work it in the summer, you know, and stuff like that. So it's going to be a family affair that'll be really fun. And that's what we're proposing.
Okay. Yeah.
Any questions or?
Can you touch a little bit, you had gotten a couple of estimates for.
Yes, I did. I talked to the asphalt, I didn't write down the name, but he's the same guy that did the Grizzly Peak hospital, and yeah, he's been doing some. He gave me a bid. He said about $16,700 or something like that. But then he said, if you need to add some gravel, which we will, the gravel is just in the front of the building, but if you're going to come down the side and around the back and up the other side, we'll need to add a little more gravel. So we'll have to put some gravel down before he actually puts the pavement down. And he said that would only be the next $200 to $400 for that. So that's the major expense, and that's why, you know, Courtney suggested that we do this proposal, and because there's no way we could do this otherwise. I mean, and then the interior stuff is really, we've got, actually, I have a friend that's a Williams Plumbing guy. He's going to give me a bid tomorrow on the hot water tank and the sinks and stuff, so I know what those are going to run. And then the flooring, again, we've got flooring in our family that we were going to just put down. And Courtney suggested that I include that that's one of the improvements that we are gonna make is that flooring, so.
Well, because we're gonna have to take out the cabinets, we're gonna have to rip up the flooring just to make sure that the piping underneath it, because with it being not run for 30 years.
What? No, 30 years.
Well,
Mhm.
I mean, I think the big, how I view this is, I think that one thing that I've always loved about Red Lodge is they do a great job of keeping things hometown, but making things very clean and neat. So for me, looking at this, you know, you're going into town, you're looking at Red Lodge Jails, you're looking at Family Dollar, you're looking at all these things. It is kind of an eyesore, in my opinion. You got the snow plows right behind the building. So I would love to be able to kind of clean that up and really just help the appearance as you're pulling into Red Lodge, you know, stay nice and kind of hometown local and, yeah.
Yeah. Fred put this, caveat in for his daughter. She had a baby at the time. And so that's why they put it in. And he said, I don't know I think he said the baby is now 30 years old. That's where we got the 30-year thing. But I don't know how long they ran it. But it's a perfect little building. And that's what he said. He's thrilled at the thought of somebody actually using it. And of course, those equipment that's behind it, we're working to get that guy to move them and stuff like that, yeah. So, get it all cleaned up, yeah.
Okay. So this is, so Chris and I have met a couple times to just talk about what some of our zoning regulations are and to go over, I gave her a copy of the development application. I pulled some stuff from City Brew when City Brew went in several years ago to kind of show, you know, a little bit of what was required with that. But for you guys, this is sort of the phase one, like a pre-application of just sort of, you know, her to kind of propose what she'd like to do, and see what the agency might be interested in. And we can also bounce this off of Jeff and James, as well, to get sort of some of their feedback after this meeting too. For you.
I would imagine the most of the most cost would be, well, under 25,000. I can't imagine, you know, more than 20 maybe with the plumbing, I mean, the sinks and that stuff.
Yeah. Were you gonna do vegetation too, or
Yeah.
in your picnic area?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, some of that,
Maybe some shrubs and stuff, and they haven't gotten a number for those yet.
That's fine,
but
yeah.
I will.
You're our guinea pig, so.
I did tell her, I said, you're our first really to come, so though there might
I
be.
know I'm the guinea pig.
So then we have a process, which I don't think I have printed out. You did that flow.
The flow chart, so this
Yeah.
is the first step in the flow chart, is to have this pre-application meeting with the agency to just sort of say, this is what I'm proposing, these are the funds I'm proposing, and it's a smaller project, so it's, you know, not asking for too much, but just seeing, you know, getting an idea of, is this something that the agency would likely, you know, recommend to council to use funds for, you know, so it's good if it's just like, no, this is not the direction we want to go. I mean, it's redevelopment of a, you know, to me it is. So, I think it's just, yeah, if there's anything that you can foresee needing for this type of project or would like to see that the urban renewal funds can be, or the TIF funds can be used for, this is sort of that sort of scoping meeting really that we can have with Chris and Kate.
Seems like the boxes that check fitting would be, you know, the beautification part, elimination of blight in the entrance of the town. And I'd be curious to know what that little building is classified as, in terms of property taxes now. Like, they might just have it on as a shed or something. You probably don't know,
I'm
but
not sure, because it's part of that two
Yeah.
and a half, yeah, it's a little over 2 acres.
Right.
I know that his property taxes were like, I think a little over 4,000
Yeah,
last year, but yeah,
so if it were to
Mhm.
transition to an active business of some kind, that would be potentially more revenue for the district.
Yeah.
So that would be another check in the plus column. Yep, that-
Mhm, yeah.
I like your checks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the paving of driving lanes is required in the zoning to help mitigate, you know, environmental factors like dust and all of that, so that's sort of why that requirement is there. She reached out to MDT regarding if there are gonna be any permits, access permits needed. They indicated that there wouldn't be an issue, so check
and
there.
they included that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I mean, if there's anything, if, you know, if you want her to move forward with a, you know, more complete application, we can get her scheduled to actually have a public hearing, application review for the agency to review and vote on.
Have you kind of flipped through our application at all yet?
Yeah, we
Okay.
started it. I'm
Oh,
just
okay.
kind of waiting on
Cool.
the final numbers on, you know, so it can be
Great.
more accurate there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Me, like,
Yeah.
you can't see a red flag anywhere as to why we shouldn't let her move forward.
Right, yeah.
Okay. I will also speak with, Jeff and James who aren't here to kind of, I'll scan this and give them a digital version,
Okay.
and get if there's any feedback. Jeff's on the planning board and James was the community development director and created this district, so, if they have anything that they would like to see or be looking at, then I'll get you that feedback
Okay,
and, yeah, I'll walk you through with that.
okay, perfect.
I know.
I know.
We're really excited. I think it all looks so cool.
So fun.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
for our process, her next step would be we would have to schedule, once we have a complete application, schedule a public hearing, and then give that recommendation for council, and then she will go through the planning board for her conditional use review. And then if approved through planning board, then we can move forward with council to disperse the funds.
Jumping some hoops.
Yeah, there's processes involved, but
Yeah. But that's,
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing else from Victoria? Do you have, I hope you can hear us okay, but do you have any, I know you can't see it, but any initial thoughts?
None, it sounds like a wonderful idea. What I would like is to, just out of curiosity, see what was presented. If there's
Yeah.
like a file that can be sent to all of us.
Yeah, I will, the package we got today, I will scan it and file it and send it out to the whole agency.
And I sort of feel in that context that I'm a bit of a lame duck since I believe this is my last meeting, but I'm still curious about it.
You're still a part of the group for now, so, great, thanks. Okay,
Well, thanks for
I
putting
think
this
that's
together.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
thorough.
We will
Thanks for
write
being our
that
guinea
down.
pig.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Look good. Good stuff.
Legislative update. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. I'm really sorry I was late.
Oh, no worries. Hey, thanks for the invitation, to come down and.
You can come sit up front.
I'm okay standing. I'm not quite sure that I'll answer all your questions, so I'll be as brief as I can, kind of giving some highlights, and then really just interested in more of the dialogue to make sure that I answer any questions that you may have. But, there's a number, it was a pretty busy session, and I tried to, through the newspaper and Facebook a little bit, provide updates and give everybody a little bit of what was going on. But there are a lot of bills that, went through the legislature this time, and a lot of bills covering the same topic that, you know, some died, some made it through, the ones that made it through, some of them were heavily modified. So it was a challenge to follow it and stay up to date, as we went through the process. But there were a number of bills that were aimed at reducing the, amount of red tape and requirements to streamline the zoning and permitting process and reduce minimum lot size requirements, for example, increase, for example, there's one bill that we passed that allowed ADUs on lots as well. A lot of those were really geared more toward the larger urban areas where they have even more of an acute housing problem that we have here. But one of the ones that's not quite as straightforward as some of those zoning changes is House Bill 819, and I'll cover that and try to get through that as quickly as I can, and then jump to whatever else that you all would like to discuss. But House Bill 819 was what was referred to as a Christmas tree bill. It's about 5 different bills to include one of mine that got smashed together, and there are a number of different components to it. One of the things that I brought to it, and I was looking at it from an essential workforce housing type of perspective, but then the problem becomes everybody's definition of essential workforce housing. What is essential workforce housing? So my definition was police, fire, teachers, nurses, those members of the community that are required to serve the rest of the community. But, and I completely understand when you talk to everybody else, everybody has a different idea of what essential workforce is, down to restaurant owners who feel that you know, the waiters and their wait staff are essential workforce. And so it really became problematic to try to approach it from that perspective. So one of the components of my bill that survived was the ability to build single-family homes on state land trust property. One of the things I think when we think of state land trust, we typically think, I think most Montanans think of state land, federal land, kind of in one big box. If we're thinking about pristine property that we want, or land that we want to preserve. Really, state land trust, if you go to the website and take a look at it, we've got Costco's built on state land trust lands with all these other big box stores. And the mandate for state land trust lands is really to fund K-12 education. And it's supposed to be highest and best use in terms of money coming to the state to fund K-12 education. So you'll find a number of different uses, but one of the things that was not allowed was single-family homes. Multi-family homes was already allowed, but now as part of 819 and work on that, single-family homes are a part of that. That'll make more sense when I get into the other components. There's $56 million that was allocated by the state out of surplus dollars for community reinvestment organizations. Community reinvestment organizations will manage that revolving fund that, and those 56 million in state dollars is for matching dollars from local employers, whether they are public or private. And then those funds can be used to buy down 30% of the equity of a home. So just to clear up some misconceptions about that, because some people have the idea, and I've actually heard the comment made, that it is getting the government into the housing business. That's not the case. So to go through the process of getting approved for that 30% buy down, it is simply an employee, qualified employee, so they're working in the community full-time, going to the bank. The bank is, and the bankers are still making the decisions on underwriting of that loan. So we'll just use $100,000, and then you can multiply that how many ever times you need to, probably about 4 times to get to where our median home price is at, or close to it at this point. But if you have an employee that goes in and they only qualify for a $70,000 home, but the cheapest home on the market is a $100,000 home, the banker can reach in, and they otherwise qualify, meet all the underwriting requirements that the bank would normally use, then the banker can reach into the community reinvestment organization to buy down 30% of that equity. When they buy that down, moving forward, the homeowner will vest 1% of the capital gains of that home for each year they live in the home. I believe it's up to 10 years. We move back and forth with that. And so if they decide to sell the home after 3 years in that example, and let's say the home sold for $200,000, I like to use nice even numbers for easy math. If it's sold for so if there's capital gains of $100,000 on that home, then that individual would get back the $70,000 that they put in, plus $3,000 or 3% of the $100,000 capital gain, so they get back $73,000. And the community reinvestment organization would get back $127,000. So that's funding and paying for additional 30% buy downs of employee housing. On top of that, the employer who invests in that fund can direct their funds just to their employees. So let's say, I really do think that in terms of looking across the community where we could get the most traction on educating the right groups to really take advantage of this would be to reach out to our largest employers and make sure that they understand how they can use that to help alleviate the housing problems for their workforce. So it could be the school district, it could be the county, it could be the town, it could be a hospital. And then I don't want to get into mentioning all the private employers for fear of missing somebody, but those, both public and private employers, if they participate in the program, put money in, they'll get the state match with that until it's exhausted, and then it's just their funds that are unmatched going into that CRO. And then they also can add additional deed restrictions onto that housing. So, for example, they could say that nothing is vested if that employee doesn't stay in the home for at least 5 years. So, and they can add other restrictions. The goal with this was to provide employee housing and not to end up with a situation where the structure of this program ended up being used by somebody to come in, be an employee for a day, and then turn around and rent out the property as Airbnb. So that's the purpose of those deed restrictions and the way that's put in place. One other unique aspect to think about too, that's different than if the employer were just to give a stipend, a housing stipend, that would be taxed if that's the way they went about bringing down the cost of that housing for their employee. With this structure, the employee doesn't incur any additional tax liability because of that 30% buy down. So that's another nice feature of that. More on the municipality side, directly related to what you all and the town and the county are doing as you go through the planning and permitting process, is the Housing Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund. So that we did $56 million on the CROs, the Community Reinvestment Organizations. $107 million was allocated to the Housing Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund, and those provide low-interest loans to municipalities to build infrastructure for housing projects that are a minimum of 10 units per acre. So that can be used for everything that you can imagine, curbing, sewage, to build out the infrastructure for those developments that meet that density requirement. That does not mean that every acre has to be 10. It could be it could be a block of single-family homes and an apartment and some duplexes. It's the average of that acreage has to be 10 or more. And then there's another $50 million that was put toward the Coal Trust multifamily housing program, or $15 million that was allocated in the 2021 legislative session. I think by the time we hit the session, about $12.8 million of that had already been committed, so it had been employed pretty to a great extent. But there's another 50 million that was put into that to bring that total up to 65 million. That's also not a grant, but a revolving loan fund, so those funds will come back as those low-interest loans are paid off. And then the final 15 million was allocated toward targeted communities, and that was really to deal with, and it does not applicable to us, because that's really dealing with the Deer Lodge and Warm Springs communities where we've had an issue having housing available for our state prison employees and our state mental hospital employees. So it's really those first three components. If you put all of those together and you go and you do a high-density multifamily and single-family home project on state land, you could end up getting essentially a 50% reduction in the cost of that home for the homeowner to step into it. 30% with that equity buy down, and then another essentially a 20% reduction doing a long-term lease or a 75-year lease on state land for that property instead of having to purchase it outright. That long-term lease, talking to developers, was about another 20% reduction just in the initial cost up front. The only other thing that I'll say about the CRO 30% buy down, the homeowner is not stuck with missing out on all of that capital gains for the life of their, however long they remain in the home. As they get on their feet, as they build their wealth, they can buy that equity back and gain and essentially own the home free of the provisions of and the deed restrictions in the CRO. But it does get them into a home, and it helps them be able to have something that they can call their own and be able to participate in the community. So I'll stop there. We could probably talk about property taxes too, but that's not really a topic related to what you all are dealing with tonight, but happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
What's, so the follow-up from these bills of making sure that employers know that these funds are available, like what's that process gonna look like?
Yeah, I think really it's up to us to do that piece of it, to get the word out and make sure that the employers understand what's available to them. We are still in rulemaking right now, and I'm not involved in the rulemaking for 819. I'm more involved in some of the education bills that I worked with during the session on the rulemaking right now, but I do stay pretty in tune with Paul Green, who is the representative from Hardin and Custer area that was the lead sponsor on this bill. The feedback that I've gotten so far is that there's been some back and forth on the application process on what the actual form that you fill out looks like, and folks have decided that they probably are not going to be able to get that application out until after the first of the year. So that's going to delay the process. Once the rulemaking is complete, our county commissioners will have to opt in to this to be able to get those resources allocated from the state. And I think, I haven't heard any opposition to that in talking with them, but I won't make any comment on their behalf either. They can speak for themselves on where they're at with that. And then there was also some discussion on whether or not the notes that are written, because you can trade these or sell these loans just in the secondary market, just like any other mortgage that's written. Most mortgages written by banks are sold on the secondary market. So some of the questions that have come up from our local bankers is, do these have to be sold on the secondary market? And that is being adjudicated right now in the rulemaking. I think where it will end up is that they don't have to be. So if our local banks want to maintain these loans on their books, because they do represent a pretty significant opportunity in terms of return on investment, then they can do that and maintain those locally. But I have talked with several of the large public employers in the county about this. But everybody knows at this stage, we're in a bit of a
Mhm.
waiting game on the rulemaking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that helps because I know when we've talked about workforce housing projects in the past and developers working with employers to ensure that 10% of the units they will rent out. That helps, but I feel like this helps kind of take that a step further for those employers of being able to actually provide something that's a little bit more affordable.
Mhm. And I think that's naturally where my mind goes, and I think where most people's mind go when you talk about the structure of this bill and the funds that were allocated, is new projects. But there's also the opportunity just to go after market opportunities too, and buy down, find a employee, finding a home that's available on the market, and being able to use the program to buy down that for an existing home. So that is an opportunity as well. Being realistic with where interest rates are at right now, and the fact that not many people want to sell their home, because if you sell a home and you're staying here, or if you're moving anywhere, you gotta get another loan probably to buy a home. So just staying in tune with what the Fed is doing and where interest rates will be at, I think that by the time we get the rules in place, probably by February, after the first of the year, if things go well, and then hopefully interest rates are coming back down by next summer, that will help with opening up some inventory in the market, existing inventory in the market as well as new additions or new developments.
Yeah, no, we've talked with a developer who's interested in trying to do some affordable workforce housing within the TIF district, but even with TIF assistance, it just still wasn't penciling out. And so this is great for us to also be able to say there's other tools, especially for those out-of-state developers that may not be aware of some of these bills that are coming in the next few months. But is there anything else, so for just sort of the goal of this agency with our community entrance and, trying to prioritize housing there, is there anything else that you think this agency should be aware of? Any other bills or anything that might help them?
There's another bill that essentially allowed, and I've got to look at there are some size qualifications on it in terms of size of the community or county, and I can't
I
remember.
think we can opt in if, I'm guessing you're talking about 382?
382 is one, yeah.
And there's some that's available, but you're automatically bound by them if you're over 5,000, but you can
Right.
opt into them if you're under 5,000.
That's it. And I don't know
That
if,
plan bill?
what I was thinking of is, there was a provision in one of the bills, I can't remember, it's 382, that basically said, if it's zoned commercial, you can build multifamily, period.
Yeah, I think that one it's only for over 5,000, but we
You
we
can-
already allow that in our commercial
Yeah,
district.
but if you opt into it, then there's some benefits you get, so we can opt into it. So if you're over 5,000, you don't get to vote, it is the way.
No, that's a different bill.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a different one. And I think it would be good for Red Lodge to opt into that. That's the one where everyone's trying to update their growth policies and subdivision regs and to, be in compliance with that one. But I think that one it was over 5,000, but some of the bills, especially in regards to zoning, didn't change much for Red Lodge because we
Right.
already allowed accessory dwelling units in all zoning districts. There is something about the setbacks and ADUs that we need to change, but, and we allow multifamily and commercially zoned properties, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else that would be specific for.
One other one related to zoning, but not directly related to what you all do, is with childcare facilities. I don't know if you're aware of that, but something to be aware of is there has been an issue with some homeowners associations preventing or classifying childcare as commercial. and so they were not allowing the homeowners to be able to, watch kids in their home, and so that, we passed a bill that does not allow them to categorize that as commercial anymore. We're really looking at whatever we could do to reduce the cost of childcare with all the other expenses that folks are dealing with. We also tinkered with the number of children that can be watched. We didn't change the number of infants, it stayed at 4 for any one individual, but we did put some laws on the books that will make it harder for folks, for homeowners associations to prevent folks from having childcare out of their home.
In some of those bills, I understand the importance of being able to purchase something and owning it outright, but some of the projects that we think about are multi-use, where you might have commercial on the bottom and then apartments on top. Are there other bills that would help with reducing costs of just rentals? Or is it all kind of apply to everything?
You know, there's not as much that was done on rentals. We just couldn't get to consensus on it. When you start to get into the rentals, you really start running into what should government be involved in, what should we allow, or try to allow the market to do. In my own mind, a big part of the problem that we're dealing with is we artificially held interest rates way too low for far too long, and a bunch of people speculated on the real estate market and could do it for free, you know, if they had the capital and the resources to be able to do it. So we're swinging back in the other direction. I think that part of dealing with the rentals is going to be dealing with our tax structure. So I think some questions we need to ask is, and I know it's not popular, but, you know, should a property that's being used as an Airbnb, is that residential or is it commercial tax purposes? That's you know, something that we need to take a look at. Ag land that's being used purely for recreational is being taken out of production. Should it still benefit from the ag tax rate? So those are some really popular topics, I know, that nobody gets emotional about, but,
I was watching that short-term rental as residential bill. I was trying to track that one and wondered what some of the behind-the-scenes discussions.
Was the desire for short-term rentals to be classified for property tax purposes as residential? Was that the idea? Or the other way, to classify them as commercial?
well, I think part of the discussion is should they be classified as commercial? Right now, they're residential, but
Yeah.
if you could have a second home, I think it was 2015 when we took away the homestead reduction for property taxes. So, you know, our residential property homesteads are now taxed just like an Airbnb or anything else after we removed that particular homestead exemption. So should we take a look at, did that really achieve what we wanted it to achieve? Another discussion, of course, is on the 95 mills and with schools and what that's going to do. It's going to reduce taxes now, but it's going to increase them a year from now, because that's not going to get backfilled from the general fund, the state, after the first year. So there's going to be a whiplash effect in that regard. So I don't know if I answered your question, but.
Oh, I was just curious. I work for the DOR, and I just know in this county, we don't differentiate, you know, if it's a house, it's a house. But...
Yeah, and that's something that would have to be addressed, you know, on a statewide level. And there's been a lot of discussion about what should have been done at the state. And should the state have capped or done more to cap local government and schools from being able to raise property taxes? But it's a really complex issue. You probably know better than me working at DOR, but, you know, if you start capping things that affect every county and community differently.
Yeah.
In some of the counties that we looked at, if you brought down the mills for residential, and it doesn't matter what county you're in, if you don't do anything with spending and you bring down residential mills, who are you tax shifting to? because somebody's still paying. So it's who do you shift it to? And if you look at some counties, if you brought down the mills on residential, to the degree that they were being talked about, you would have had your commercial taxes or your commercial properties would have had an 80% increase in taxes, because they represent, I think residential property represents, of the 18 property classes that we have in the state of Montana, residential accounts for about 74%.
In some counties, it's really high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's, mills that are, that pay taxes before no longer exist, mines that existed no longer exist, coal-fired power plants, all those things, that tax base, as it's dwindled, residential has picked it up. Another question that we gotta ask is, should we take a look at a sales tax to be able to buy down mills on our property tax? We've got,
Some people popular bringing up all these podcasts.
yeah, hey, but if you want, well, we're on Zoom, so,
This is being recorded.
there's conversations we've gotta have, because we are, as brick and mortar stores have closed their doors because they've been impacted by online retailers, they're not paying taxes, and the online retailers are not paying taxes because we don't have a sales tax. Our tourism has boomed, but tourists don't pay a lot of tax to support our economy. So, could we look at a scheme where, and we could do it, I think it's up to 4%, and estimates are that it could bring in a max of about $2 billion, but I think it might be palatable to talk about using that to actually buy down property tax. I think, at least folks that I've been talking to want to have that conversation when, I've had people approach me about their property taxes.
Yeah, the hard part is you have to sell. What we're doing is we're getting 70% of that money from people out of state rather than in state.
Oh, so, yeah, I'm gonna have to tell me on it. I know all about it. Can I just ask, how do you feel about TIF districts? Because every year, they try to eliminate this funding mechanism, and obviously, we are in support of it, and it's a really, for communities that have such resource-strapped budgets, it's really hard to come up with money, and here we have this opportunity here, and
Yeah.
it works in other places as well. So how do you feel about it?
I support TIF districts. I think that there's a lot of confusion around TIF districts because some people think that they're paying more to support somebody else, when it's not really the case with the TIF district. When I talk to people that are adamantly opposed to TIF districts, the majority of the opposition comes from this slipping in and basically going and refinancing that TIF district without going out again to the public. So I think as long as we make sure that the whole process is very transparent, and transparency helps everything, just be as, I think that we need to take a look at maybe being a little bit more transparent with the TIF districts and how they get extended, and make sure that the public has a vote in when they get extended. And if we keep the public educated on why we're wanting to extend them and what's been done with it, and what the impact to them actually is, I think that everybody can see that it's a win-win, and it's not taking anything out of anybody's pocket. It's not benefiting from it directly.
I had a question and I forgot. Kind of related to stuff.
Back when you were talking about CROs, how does that look from the developer side? Is that 30% buyback something that a developer could come in and take advantage of in, deeding out a subdivision, say, in, with those restrictions in place, and, kind of reap that benefit ahead, front-loading it, or is it more directly for the homeowner?
The way that I see that a developer could directly benefit from it is if they invested into you don't have to be an employer to invest in the CRO. So anybody could invest. So they could invest into the CRO and then directly benefit from those capital gains from those properties that take advantage of the program. That would be one way.
I see.
I think we're probably the majority of the interaction with the developer is either dealing with a large public or private employer who is taking advantage of the program and working with the developer to do it, or if a savvy developer were to put together a group of employers that all wanted to participate in a larger development and all invest into the CRO.
I work with rural communities all across the state, and I guess I would just encourage you to, I mean, you said you're not involved in rulemaking, but just from what you said, rural communities will lose out because it just takes more time and effort and connection, in rural communities to get the word out, just simply get the word out. So just from what you said, I would predict that the vast majority of Advantage is going to go to the bigger places just because it's just easier to talk to them. They have people that are housing professionals, and even here in Red Lodge, we have that advantage. We have the community foundation, and we have a planner. Like, is there any town of the size of Red Lodge that has a planner on staff? Like, there probably isn't. Well, Deer Lodge does.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be a few, but, so rural communities will lose out, and they have a huge, challenge in housing.
Right.
They have it's actually more complex than in urban places, because in urban, they have builders. In rural places, they don't have builders. So they have a double whammy of, they can't even get materials there, they don't have any skilled labor. So, it's a worse problem, different and worse. So I just would encourage you to, if there's any influence that you can exert on that, it just takes more time. And we work with, people work in Montana, and they want to work in rural places, but they just don't have the connection. So we're trying to help them make connections, but most rural towns don't have a housing professional. They have to rely on some regional or statewide, so.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, and I appreciate that. So first, the allocation of the state matching funds is based on GDP. So it's not a first come, first serve. That allocation is set. So they can't, no one organization or community can come in and get all the funds. They have a set allocation. The only way that allocation would increase for anybody is if you have a group of county commissioners that say we're not going to participate. If you have a group of county commissioners that say we're not going to participate, those funds go back in the pot and they get redistributed.
But it takes time to communicate county commissioners in rural places, because they are like,
Right.
they're essentially volunteers with
Yeah.
no experience in this realm, so like.
Mako's pretty effective on communicating with those county commissioners and getting the word out, though, I would submit. So, it would be, I can't really see a scenario where a county commissioner wouldn't understand, because they all participate with Mako, and Mako's been pretty aggressive at communicating with the county commissioners. The other thing is, and I didn't cover this, is when the county commissioners opt in, they have to designate a region, essentially a regional, development organization. So it's not gonna be an ad hoc group that they have to put together. It has to go to one of those regional community development organizations. So, in this area, Big Sky, Beartooth, you're not talking about creating they could create a new organization if they want to. I wouldn't. I would go with folks that are already doing it and are already very familiar with the processes that are in place with other programs.
And JC is on with Beartooth RC&D.
Oh, good. house? So if I have an employee that finds a house that's for sale within our district, and they want to make improvements to it, and they can apply for a grant from this committee to come and make some land improvements to this house, but they could also work on, with the bank, and, there's lots of opportunities for younger families to come in and actually purchase land and improve it within this district. I think it's just a win-win situation of bringing, you know, and this isn't with building new structures, this is actually buying a property and improving it within what we've got here.
Yeah, which is great. Well, I guess when Kara asked about your support of TIF districts, I know there's been some conversation on what those districts can fund, horizontal versus vertical infrastructure, and some debate of the limitations. Do you have any thoughts on how we can use TIF districts, if there should be like more limitations? For us, just thinking about if there's gonna be changes of what we need to be aware of for funding mechanisms for some of these applicants. I don't know, just if you have any thoughts on that.
I get it, it's hard for me just off the top of my head to, and I haven't, it's been a little bit since I looked at all the TIF discussion that we had during the last legislative session, but I would say I would really be more interested in feedback from you all. If you don't think that you have what you need to be able to deal with the specific issues that you're dealing with in this community, then I want to know what those are, and, we'll work with you to try to find a way to enable whatever it is that we need to be able to get done. So, yeah, that's what I, see as a big part of my role, is listening and working with across the district, across the communities in the district, to be able to find solutions for problems that we're facing. So I would really kind of throw that back at you and say, what do you need to do? What do you need to do or want to do that you can't do now?
Yeah.
And as long as it's an open, transparent process, and it's going back in front of the voters, if we're going to make, some big change, then I'm probably going to be, generally in agreement with working toward that.
Yeah, I've just heard some concern that there might be some restrictions on how the TIF funding is only for like infrastructure improvements and not for vertical construction. And I've heard of some examples of how that wouldn't work, and some projects wouldn't move forward. So I guess that's fair for us to, if we ever run into anything, to reach out to you. But also, if there's ever conversations, like, please reach out and come and sit and chat with this agency too, so that we can maybe give feedback as those conversations are happening.
I think it's going to be much more palatable for voters when you approach those vertical projects that are, the definition of blight was one of the topics that came up quite a bit. And so if it's demolition to get rid of blight, I think that, to make it horizontal is, nobody has an issue with, because that has a lot of value for the community, crime reduction, all those sorts of things. Makes it more cost-effective for a developer to come in if some of that demo can be taken care of with utilizing TIF funds. Makes it more economical if you can bring in the horizontal components that they need to be able to go vertical. Where I think people have problems is when you have a big development where it's clear that a single developer or individual is benefiting off of the TIF district as a whole. So you can, with existing buildings, I think you can get more consensus around what should be allowed in a vertical structure, like update HVAC systems, roofing systems in some cases that I've seen. those things that you need to do really to remove blight, to be able to get it rented. So as long as it's blight reduction, then I think that's pretty palatable with most folks. The things that you either need to do to get a dilapidated building leased and rent it out, or to tear it down so that something new can come in. So anything past that where you've got the building demoed and now you're wanting to go vertical and use TIF funds to do it, I think that's probably problematic.
Yeah, I know the example that I heard was a lot of these historic buildings, for them to open up, they have to put in elevators. And so that cost of putting in an elevator, it's vertical construction, but that project couldn't happen without that component of it. And so just making sure that if there is going to be horizontal versus vertical, that it's very clear, those definitions are clear of how they can and can't be used.
Yeah, if it's not clear enough, then let's work on that.
Yeah.
I think broadly, bringing it up to code has generally been accepted as meeting TIF, the intent of TIF.
Yeah.
One man's blight is another man's historic gem.
Yeah, that word blight was a lot of fun for Red Lodge when we were getting our TIF district going. But I just would try to tell people, it's kind of an old, outdated term, but the intent is still there, but it offended a lot of people, but it's sort of the intent of a TIF district.
Well, they're paying attention, I guess.
Yeah. Great. Anything else?
Thanks for coming.
Hi, this is Alan.
Question from
Is there a question from the audience?
There is, I'm not sure if the prior discussion has concluded, but I wanted to, if I could, just take a couple of quick minutes to run something by the Urban Renewal Committee.
Yeah, Alan, we'll get to public stuff in a minute.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
Okay, thanks,
Yeah,
Rebecca.
thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. That was very educational.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
cool idea.
Great job.
It's exciting to know that people can come into this community and have reason to be here. And attract employees, and we can attract, it's really exciting for the school district to be able to say,
Yeah.
you could come in and you can go to the bank and with this tool and possibly buy a house.
I hope the school, association statewide is really
Yeah, exactly.
tuned into this, and they can just do like what Mako's doing, just really make sure that administrators know how to talk to their employees.
We have a legislator update, coming up in 3 weeks, with Chris Goff. So it's coming up here pretty soon. So hopefully, if that's not involved, I'm gonna bug him and make sure that it really is.
The school board.
Yeah.
Well, let me know.
Yeah.
If you would have popped in,
That'd be great.
be able to do
That would
that.
be fantastic. We always bug you, so it's fine.
Yeah, always, please do.
Yeah, you've got a lot of really great education built, so. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
You can stay, but, usually these meetings don't last very long.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Fred.
I can stay as well.
It's up to you.
If you stay, go.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is Montana Urban Renewal District project.
I think Jeff had volunteered for that, and
Okay,
we're
okay,
postponed.
okay. Treasurer's report.
I don't have anything new. Did we get anything from the county as far as?
I still haven't heard
Okay.
that I did ask for it to be sent to me if one came through, but I can ask again. Haven't heard anything.
Written correspondence.
I did not receive any written correspondence.
Okay, but we have then communications from the audience, so that must be
Yeah.
Mr. Best.
All right, Alan, you're up.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Alan Best. I'm from the Sustainability Board. And I'm honestly, this is my first time attending this meeting, and I'm not sure if this is the right forum for my questions versus the Parks Committee meeting, which happens later. But anyway, I know some of you, but hello to the ones I don't know. There is a big grant which is in the process of opening for applications from the EPA. It's called the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants program, and basically they're trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by giving out money to municipalities that have a way of putting it to good use. And I wanted to ask the Urban Renewal Committee what they thought of the four areas that might be appropriate for submitting for grants through this program. The first is the planting trees, and I think I probably know the answer on whom to talk to about this is probably Courtney. This is for planting trees. There could be funds available for doing so because they serve as a carbon sink. And so I went to the 2015 Comprehensive Park Plan, and it had kind of some good ideas, and discussions are ongoing. But two other topics which you guys might have some valuable input on are wayfaring signs and active transportation implementation. So the wayfaring signs, back in 2017, I found this out by going to the City of Red Lodge website. There's a 2017 document which talks about wayfaring signs. These are basically signs which will help people navigate around the City of Red Lodge, and it did a pretty cool job of in this study, kind of saying exactly what kind of signs and exactly what locations would be the most useful to people traveling. And that includes biking and walking and sort of alternative modes of transportation, which would reduce our carbon emissions. And I want to talk to you guys about that, hear your thoughts on that. The next one is the active transportation study. This is, man, going back in time. 2016, the City of Red Lodge commissioned this study, and the details are available online. But basically, it shows select sidewalks which might be most appropriate for either installing for the first time or improving and kind of ripping up and redoing the sidewalks. But it's all towards helping people more efficiently walk or bike or whatever they're going to do so that they can avoid driving in a car from place A to place B within Red Lodge. And so those are the first three. The fourth is trails. They're going way back in history. 2015, that same park plan as mentioned for the trees study, it shows where there might be potential to have money from this grant fund support the construction and maintenance of trails around Red Lodge. And I think I actually know whom to talk to about that. It's probably the Beartooth Recreation and Trails Association, the BRTA. But want to get y'all's input on all these four aspects: the trees, the wayfaring signs, the active transportation, sidewalks, and trails. And see if you guys had any thoughts. I'm not sure how appropriate the Urban Renewal Committee is, but I'd love to hear your input and thoughts on how I might be able to go forward on determining whether and to what extent we want to ask for grant funds to fund these measures. Thank you very much.
So one of the projects that could work under this funding is we've talked about doing an engineering study to improve the Highway 78 walking paths, unofficial walking paths that people use. And so I think that was actually listed in our urban renewal plan as an example of how the TIF funds might be used for infrastructure improvements. So, you know, if there's funding assistance for an engineering study and then implementation, hopefully, of a safer walking path for people who walk from the West Bench down and vice versa. So that's a big one. Another one I think identified in the urban renewal plan is the 2nd Street And we've talked with Great West and Public Works about improving the sidewalks, and we've had high school students present to council before on improving the walkability of Second Street for the high schoolers when they walk into town for lunch and, you know, for events and things like that. So that's one that we could potentially use TIF funds for, but again, if there's any other funding assistance to do some infrastructure improvements along Second Street leading up to the high school. Those are two off the top of my head that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Any other thoughts?
Like with trees, like we're not, like,
Yeah.
it's the applicants that are planting the trees, not us, right?
I mean, we could, you know, we can do public infrastructure and trees are considered green infrastructure, you know, infrastructure improvements. But that is, I think that would be more under the Parks Board realm. And I mentioned to Alan too, any of that really, you would also need capacity for, you know, being able to hire someone to do those projects. But yeah, so those two, Alan, I'd say those two, and I can, if you haven't looked at the urban renewal plan,
Yeah.
I can try to direct you to that too. There might be some other projects specifically listed in there.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I'm writing all this down, and I hope to have updates for you guys in the Parks Board later on.
Cool. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
Almost like $1 million or something.
Yeah.
Great.
Put some sidewalks in at the
Yeah.
high school, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any other business?
So I'll make my announcement.
Uh-oh. That doesn't sound good.
Oh, man.
So my time with the city is, done at the end of the year. So we've already put out, you know, the application and had a couple of applicants for it, but, so December will be my last urban renewal agency meeting.
Wow.
So I might still find ways to be involved in some aspects. And also the company I'm working for, if they're still the contract planners, I'd probably be the point person for Red Lodge too. So I don't really know to what extent. A lot of it kind of depends on if we are able to hire someone so that I can overlap, or if they're still looking after the new year, but yeah. So.
You should join our board.
There's a spot open
And there's already
there.
precedent of former city planners.
Yeah, being on this
Exactly.
committee.
It's a thing you have to do.
Yeah, it's a rite of passage.
Yeah, we'll
You're not
rewrite the
allowed to
bylaws.
leave.
You can leave,
So looking at next, December meeting, I mentioned that
Yeah.
school board meeting, it's the same night.
On the
It's that
11th?
Monday, on the 11th.
Okay. Do you all want to move that meeting? There's Sustainability Board is on Monday the 18th. I mean, if you guys want
Please do that.
to. I'll bring the eggnog. It doesn't have to be a Monday. I know that tends to be, I think that was like the easiest day for most members.
I mean, the school board meeting starts at 6, so it could be I could just leave and move to that one if you still want to hold it at 5:30 here. You all.
What do you guys think? Is there another?
I mean, most weekdays after, 5, I can rush over, so be flexible. I don't know where our other 3 stand as far as.
Well, I think James probably, I think he might still try to serve through December.
Okay.
And Jeff as well. I guess mostly it's just Victoria and Al.
The last meeting, that
Mhm.
she's done.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Can you come? So you're saying you're down by 5:30?
I could come at 5:30, I just have to leave by 6 on the
Yeah.
11th.
Yeah.
Is it there?
Yeah,
Okay,
Okay,
just leave it, I mean,
okay, on the 11th,
sounds
5:30.
good.
we'll give you the floor at the very beginning to.
Right. It's you and then
Okay.
Okay, well. No, anything else?
Yeah, the banger. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Doug, for coming.
Yeah. I learn more and more every meeting, you guys.
Yeah, it's